All right, so it is 6:41. I'm going to try to keep an eye on uh, the room while we're getting started here. I'm going to paste one more time the Nearpod code in the chat. So if you could go to the Nearpod, and that's where you're going to be able to access a lot of the things that we're doing throughout the 50 minutes or so that we have together. I want to definitely be respectful of the fact that we've got another presenter coming to use the room after, so I will certainly end on time and give you guys time to fill out the survey at the end as well, so we can make sure we get you your gift card. So teaching fiscal policy in the COVID era, they put out a call and turn these lessons around in, I'd say, a period of maybe 3 months. And so I'm going to share with you guys my favorite lesson from this collection that you can find on Econ Ed Link at the Council for Economic Education website. So that's the National Council. I'm Derek D'Angelo. I'm the president of the Michigan Council on Economic Education. And I'm also a classroom teacher. This is my last year in the classroom. So that was my last parent teacher conference right before I got on here. And got a couple more months left here to get my 30 years in with my 5 that I bought. I'm awful proud to say I made a good financial decision to buy those years when I had the opportunity way back in the day. So the kind of the pro tip for this is to have the Nearpod open in one half of your screen or on a second screen, and the Zoom in the other half or on the other. Thank you, Pat. So I'm going to kind of guide you through the Nearpod. The Nearpod is an interactive presentation tool. I figure if nothing else, you can get Nearpod out of this if you've never interacted with the Nearpod. Are there anybody who has used Nearpod before? Maybe a second to either unmute or put it in the chat if you have. Just because I love the tool, I utilize it in my class all the time to really keep the kids engaged and interacting, and I grade them on participation. So it just holds them accountable when they're in the remote environment. So I really like Nearpod. A similar one would be Pear Deck. Very similar functionality. It's just really what you're more comfortable with. And Next Gen Personal Finance does a lot of Nearpod stuff. So I work with them on some things, and I just thought, all else equal, I'll go with Nearpod. So as I will guide you through the slides from my end, and some things are things that you can click on and you can get a little bit more into. So I don't necessarily have to screen share as I'm guiding you through these things. So the teaching fiscal policy in the COVID era, that slide right there is just the link to the collection of lessons within this grouping. So they've got 5 lessons on there right now. I think there's a 6th one coming that they're probably finalizing, but we're going to focus on the who gets bailed out and why lesson. And the other ones that are there that we're not going to get into, the intervention, whether to intervene in the economy, and kind of weighing that that Governor Cuomo, I forget what his quote was, but he said something about how we'd do anything to save one life. And I'm like, really, if it blows up your whole entire economy to save one life, that's a good decision, because this economics is all about choices and decision making and rational decision making, and that's kind of the question that lesson would get into. COVID-19 not affecting everybody equally as far as the impacts. There's a lot of great stuff to go into as well with that. Multipliers in fiscal policy and the role of state governments in crises. So we're going to focus on who gets bailed out and why. I just think it really lends itself to a good online lesson. So that's what we're doing. All right. So I'm going to take us to the next slide in Nearpod, and it's a collaborate board. And I want to ask you, as we get started on this lesson, what industry, and I'm very specifically not giving you industries to pick from or defining what industry is yet, but what industry is the most important in the United States? You can just share a quick thought and post your thought on this collaborate board, and we'll be able to see what people say. And this is a tool that's built right into Nearpod. There's some things you can, I like one thing I like doing in Nearpod is that you can share Google Docs in there, and then the kids can type into like a Google sheet directly in the Nearpod, which is kind of useful. So tech, energy, Texas people would definitely say energy right now, right? Service industry, farming, healthcare, shipping. Yeah, shipping, getting the goods where they need to be, for sure. There's just so much right now in econ. I just think we could talk about what went on with Texas and the deregulation of the energy industry in Texas, and we could talk about what should be the role of the government be in helping promote semiconductor production. It's such a great time to be teaching econ. But this is econ. This lesson could be used also in a civics class for sure. All right, so let's keep going. And the next thing that we do in this lesson, and the resources have a PowerPoint built in for you. This Nearpod I built, but the resources in that collection have PowerPoint, have all the handouts available to you. This is something specific that I built for what we're doing here. And if you wanted me to share it with you, that's something that I'd be willing and able to do at some point. So a bailout, a business, individual, or government provides money and or resources to a business in danger of failing. I typically talk about the bailouts that happened with the Great Recession when defining that, but even with these students now that we're teaching, they were not even probably in school yet when the recession happened, right? It's always crazy to think about how how little our students have experienced in life. So give a basic general idea of what a bailout is, a little bit more in depth of what governments do, government assistance, government loans, capital injections, the different forms that it could take, some of the controversy with it, and some of the history of bailouts, which really comes into the next slide. So there's a document, a handout that has been created that's either a Google Doc version or a regular document. We're not going to read it today. That goes through, it's about a 5 to 7 minute, not really, I don't think it would be a 5 to 7 minute read. It's a pretty short read. It's just one page or so. And you could discuss that a little bit more with the students after they read about some of the bailouts in history, and the fact that it isn't just this recent time period where there's been bailouts. So we're not going to do that just for sake of time today. The PDF is here. If you did click on this slide, Nearpod allows you to embed a PDF, not kind of embed a PDF, but put a link to a PDF in here. And when you click on that, it would show you the handout 1, a brief history of US bailouts. And you can see it's just over a page. So pretty easy read. All right, so we're going to skip through that. So this is some of the questions that the lesson does include for you to have a discussion with your students. If any of the bailouts stood out to them, maybe they had experience with one, their parent worked for a company that was bailed out, or they had heard of a company. You could talk about too big to fail and what that really means, and the position that puts the government in. And let's see, the last one, that does the opinion change if we find that the businesses were able to repay their loans? So that's the discussion prompts for you. All right. Now, the next thing is a kind of another optional resource when you're talking about bailouts. If you were to click on this slide in the Nearpod, it would open up in a new tab, a website called from ProPublica that gives a bailout tracker. And again, we're not going to go through this, but it lists all of the different bailouts and whether the Treasury ended up making profit off of the bailout, from how much was dispersed versus how much was returned to the Treasury. So as part of the TARP funding, I think is specifically what we're looking at with this stuff. All right, Continuing to go on through the slides. So we're going to get into this kind of lesson now, and you guys are going to do some hands-on-ish work for us. Scenario time, you're a member of the U.S. Congress about to vote on a bill. So that's the role that you're taking that can provide government money to specific industries. In each round, we're going to have 3 rounds. You may choose up to 3 industries to receive the money. Okay. Now, some of the rules: you may not add new industries or individuals to the list. So what we establish as the industries are going to be what you guys are going to use. The amount of money is will be significant, but we're not really going to be determining that today. And well, I'm not necessarily going to have a lengthy discussion with you on the reasoning. That's, I think, throughout the whole lesson, something that you see is wanting to have the kids verbalize what their reason is, that there isn't necessarily a right or wrong answer. And I see myself coming into that a lot this year as I'm going into discussions with students that, there's not like, should you lease a car or buy a car? I'm not even saying, buying a car is better financially. It really depends on what somebody values. If they value getting a new car every 2 years, then maybe leasing's the better choice for them. So the reasoning behind it is the important part. And I think you'll see that through the lesson. All right, so this slide contains handout 2, which is the bailout decisions. This is where a lot of the recording would take place in each of the different rounds. The first round is your personal preference. The second round, you get some additional information on the economics of things. And then the round 3 is remembering, hey, I'm a member of Congress. I've got to think about the politics of this decision, not just the economics of this decision. Our industries are going to be agriculture, airlines, automotive manufacturing, construction, entertainment and performing arts, healthcare, professional sports, and retail. All right, so this slide, just kind of give those again. I was reading it from the PDF before, but we've got 8 different industries, and you're choosing 3 that would get a bailout based upon whatever information and criteria that you kind of have at that time. All right, so a little bit more specific on the agriculture includes livestock, farming, timber, support staff, corporate jobs involved in agriculture, airlines, all the support services that go along with airlines. Automotive includes only manufacturing for all companies located in the United States. Construction would be all types of construction companies. Healthcare does not include drug companies, but all levels of healthcare: nurses, doctors, pharmacists. Retail includes staff for brick and mortar stores, does not include online component, does not include food service industry. Entertainment, performing arts, actors, writers, directors, technical staff. Professional sports would include athletes, corporate jobs, venue level support for those events as well. All right, so at this point, what I want to do is, before we get into, sorry, I'm just looking at my slides here. I want to look at how many people we have, see if a breakout room makes sense or not. With 9 people, I'm going to say no. I was originally, you don't know how many people you're going to have, and I was thinking whether or not we're going to use breakout rooms. But right now, what I would ask people to do would be to just choose one that they believe should receive a bailout. You in the lesson you'd be choosing 3, but with the Nearpod here in the polling, you're just going to be choosing 1 that you would feel should get a bailout. So this is, with not a lot of information, it's more of your personal feeling or connection to that industry at this point. And we would ask students to, identify which industry they would want to bail out and then discuss it. So this is where you put them in a smaller group. You might use a breakout room and say, okay, you guys discuss, and your decision that you put for this part of the lesson is going to be your personal decision, but at least you could put them in a breakout room or a small group to discuss what industry they feel should get a bailout. All right, so Amanda said agriculture. Amanda, why are you thinking agriculture? I'm going to make you give me your reasoning a little bit. Are you in a rural area?
No, not really. I guess I just always thought that, farmers are kind of the backbone of this country and they often get overlooked for a lot of things. And if they need anything, they need income to provide food for all of us. So of all of those choices, I definitely think agriculture is important.
Yeah. Yeah. My friends in Nebraska would certainly appreciate your viewpoint. Dan, why are you thinking agriculture? Anything, same reasons or anything different?
I was thinking that once there's a little bit of food scarcity, that would potentially start a panic.
Oh my gosh, we got panic over toilet paper. Could you imagine if there was food scarcity? Oh my goodness. I think that's a good point. Keep everybody under control and calm. Hungry people are angry people, right? And I'm presenting at dinner time. That's funny. Um, so I have not had dinner yet. When we're done, that's my dinner time. Ryan, you are like sitting in over there in an island with entertainment. Why are you thinking entertainment?
I think it's going to be the last to come back with this COVID. And actually, I do know a lot of people who, their livings have been musicians and artists and all those sorts of things that don't have an end in sight of when they're going to get back to it. And I think just culturally, like right, just our own. You think back to the Great Depression. You put people to work in the arts, and then just kind of boost self-esteem, and I think that just goes kind of snowballs to the rest of it.
Yeah, I think it can really connect a lot, like you're saying. We have a digital photo frame up on the wall in the living room, and sometimes I'm sitting there on the couch and I look at it and I go, "Oh, look at honey. Do you remember when we used to go places and do things?" That's not happening anymore. Um, and I think that you kind of hit that I'm just excited to go places and do things, and a lot of that does connect back to entertainment and performing arts. Is anybody I don't know if who in here is an econ teacher, but in Morning Brew, which is a newsletter I look at every morning, they were talking about non-fungible tokens, NFTs. Has anybody heard of this stuff? It has nothing to do with anything that we're doing in this lesson, but very interesting. I think it's going to gain a lot of steam. I think you'll be hearing about it in the next 6 months. Basically selling ownership over a little like clip. Think about one of those little meme clips that's funny that just kind of can play over and over again, that or any digital art or anything, kind of digital ownership over little pieces. The NBA is selling highlights, like, so you're then the owner of that highlight. It's kind of crazy, but I think that there's something there. I really think with our students that I have autographed baseballs on my wall. I don't think that the kids growing up are going to care about autographed baseballs as much as they would care about something digital on their phone. So just something to look on your radar about NFTs, just in case you're looking for something to piddle around on tonight and learn something new. All right, so we had Kevin said retail. A lot of people with farming, though. It seems agriculture is very important. So let's keep going in the lesson. This, I'm just showing you that this is included in the PowerPoint, that you could have this up on your board and put tally marks on here or whatever else. So it's can be very flexibly done with an online polling feature or with more of a traditional sense as well. So let's go into round 2 now with more economic data. So what we're going to do is show the number of employees in each industry. So you have to consider the economic impact of layoffs that happen during recessions and the number of jobs you might support with a bailout. The economic impact, things like overall sales, tickets to events, the relationships with associated industries. and the EPI employment multiplier. So when one job is created, other jobs are needed to support it. In some industries, this effect is larger, so the multiplier is higher. So you'll see the multiplier, the economic impact with associated industries, and the number of employees. Those are the 3 data points we're going to look at. So this slide contains the PDF, and this image will be on our next slide. So the only reason why this is included here is if you wanted to click on it and kind of have it in a tab for yourself, it's there and you could look at it kind of at your own leisure. But I'm going to go past it to the next slide where I took an image of that data. So we've got agriculture, 2.3 million, kind of looking where it ranks to some of the other industries we're looking at. The estimated size of the economic impact in billions. So what is it, 4th largest? And then the EPI employment multiplier is kind of middle of the road, I guess it looks like, for agriculture. And you can see them for, obviously look at all the different industries there. And now with a little bit more data, rather than just making an emotional decision, now you've got a little bit of the logic behind your decision. And, what we're doing in this step right here is to really think about, if your if the logical look at these things and how much you might weigh these different categories, like, okay, number of employees, what means the most to you in determining if it changes your mind of who you would bail out. And in the normal lesson, you're picking 3 to bail out. So, maybe it wouldn't change the 3, or maybe it would just change one of them. All right. So you're a member of Congress, and that's something to continue to think about here as we get into the 3rd step. But at this point in this Nearpod, if you want to look back at the data, you can click on the image of the data in the upper left of your screen, I think is probably where it is. Maybe it's on a different part. I've got the teacher view versus a student view, but so you can look back at that image I've included on this slide. But now with that additional information, does it change who you think should receive a bailout? You can go ahead and kind of give that data a look for a minute, and then give me your vote of who you think should get a bailout. Maybe it's the same, maybe it changes. It doesn't mean you have to throw out what you were thinking in round 1. It doesn't mean, the economic data, you could ignore the economic data. I think our politicians do it all the time, don't they? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It's a lot of different things that go into their decision making. So, but we have the economic data at this point. We'll get the political data next. So we're going to give everybody a minute to kind of look that over and make their mark on what they think who should receive the bailout. So Amanda, you changed from agriculture to healthcare, correct?
Sorry. I don't know. I guess healthcare was one of my top 3 that I would have picked anyways.
Yeah.
And just seeing the numbers, I think, like you said, it's kind of an emotional look at the first time. And then once you get the numbers, you've got to kind of look at it more directly in that sense. So when you look at how many employees and how much money is needed, I think you change your mind a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, but you could also argue, with some of that healthcare data that it has a lower employment multiplier. So how important is that multiplier in your, decision making? That's an interest. I don't know. I'm sure there's a way to calculate which is the right answer, but I think that's interesting to weigh the different things.
Well, and like you said, most of the time they don't they don't look at that stuff anyway. So if we're looking at true bailout information, so
True. Yes. The step three will be the most important, I would think, the politics of it, right?
right, exactly.
Can anybody else share if they changed what their vote was, why they did, or what their thinking was? You could just unmute yourself and share that.
I'll jump in. I originally picked retail because I was thinking just impact for people that might be struggling a little bit more, and retail workers tend to be some of the lower paid people that are going to be struggling, and they're not bringing a lot of income in, that sort of thing. Looking at the multiplier, I switched my answer to automotive just because I'm thinking, well, locally Michigan, that affects a lot more businesses, and it's going to affect those same amount of people.
It's a huge multiplier.
Yeah,
5.4.
quite a bit.
And I mean, we kind of see that 5.4. I mean, for Michigan, like when I first went through this lesson, there was a professor in Florida, I believe, who specifically wrote this lesson, Bill Bosshart, and a lot of people seem surprised by the 5.4 being so large and the multiply being so large, but with everybody around here working for a supplier to the big three or whatever, it's like that wasn't that big of a surprise to me. I'm like, what? This is a surprise? But around the rest of the country, it was kind of a surprise. All right, so let's go on to the next slide, and I want to make sure that you see again that you have that tally for round 2, and you could compare that with your tally from round 1. But round 3 is the elected official variables. So now you've got to look at, okay, the constituents. What do the people who elected you want? What industries do they work in? What would help the most people in your district? What about lobbyists? Which experts are you going to listen to, and who's donating to your campaign? And promises. Did you promise to fix the damn roads? Now you're going to fix the damn everything else. That's what I heard. I saw the kind of the preview of the new campaign. Something fix the damn something else. Kudos to them for that great campaign logo, but or slogan. But we've got promises. What promises did you make? What political party or what does your political party want you to do? Is there pressure from somebody up above you to act a certain way? These are all things you've got to consider. So my thought was to assign congressional districts by last name. So let's just stay with that for simplicity. If your last name is A through D, you're going to be District A. I'll show you those slides in the next. On the next slide, I'll show you the congressional district information. But just look right now at your last name range and what district you'd be in, so you know which district card to kind of pay attention to. Okay. All right, so next slide. This is a PDF. If you click on it, it will open up in a new tab, and it is the handout for congressional district roll cards. You would typically have the students broken out into their groups of 5 or 6, and then give them their different roll cards within that group, and each person in that group would be a different congressional person sharing their viewpoint with the rest of their student group. So this could be done in a breakout room, it could be done in the classroom, and face to face, where you say, okay, if you're District A, here's your card. District B, here's your card. So these would have to be cut up. You wouldn't give out like the whole sheet to the students. So this has got the 6 different districts. So I'm going to give you a minute to go ahead and read your political information that you need to help you make a decision. And then, you got to kind of really get into that role at that point. So let me give you a minute to read through that. Make sure that you've clicked on that PDF because I'm going to go on to the next slide here. So you've asked students to, take this role on this card. This is going to be their last vote. But this part of the discussion can be as simple or as complicated as you want. Obviously there's so many different factors that go into an elected official's decision. I think that this helps them understand fiscal policy a little bit more, and just how it's scaffolded in the decision-making here, and all the different people that the politicians need to look at and the information that they need to listen to. So you really want them to assume the role on that card during this round. And even if they disagree with it, they can still get into that role. All right. And they should act like they're a congressional member, from that district. And they can, in that group, make deals with other group members. I mean, you could really take it to that extreme, like make deals with other group members to try to get people to, vote for their side, to include their group in that top three. I think this is where it really kind of is helpful when you're doing three, right? Because it's like, okay, I care about one or two things for sure, politically or economically, but then that third one, maybe I'm just going to include in there to do a favor for my friend over here. And I think everything is a lesson, because we know how kids act, in a situation where they're in a group, they're going to do something just for their friend, right? Well, that's a good lesson. Politicians do that all the time. They just make a deal with their friend all the time to get the votes they need. So that's something that they would be able to do in that group if you wanted to go that far with it, or you don't have to go that far with it as well. It's kind of up to you. So we're gonna have you guys record your vote in a second on that on a slide, but I do want to make sure that you guys know some of the other things that we offer as a council. Personal finance challenge that we have going on April 24th. We're going to have the state treasurer, Rachel Eubanks, be one of the judges. The kids basically get a family situation, and they have to act like they're the personal financial person that is going to give this family advice. So the personal finance challenge is an event that we do, and we've got a link for that on our website. If you just Google Michigan Council on Economic Education, or you just click on this slide, it would take you to that part of our website. We also do an economics challenge. This one is more of a traditional test where the kids are taking a 15-question test, 3 rounds of tests, and then we do an online quiz bowl. We figured out how to do that remotely, so they'll do that for the state championship. So that's another thing that we offer for student competitions and student things. I have in here, and this is really, it didn't put it as a link, it put it right into the form. So we've got an Invest in Girls thing that we're going to start up this year for the first time this spring. We might be able to do a second group of 25, so we might be able to do 50 girls instead of 25. I'm currently talking to some sponsors about that. But it'd be a 7-week program on Wednesdays right now from 7 to 8 for our initial group, and the girls who attend will receive a stipend for attending, and it's getting each week a new personal finance lesson with an educator as well as a industry professional. So we'll have people from the banking industry, insurance industry, Raymond James advisors in there working with the girls. So that link, I'm going to make sure that I put in the chat before we're done, because it takes you right to that form there, and you want to probably have that link so that you can share it with your students, because they would be the ones filling that out. All right, so we did our roll cards. We're going to have you vote now, taking all 3 things into account: your political issues, the economic data, your personal feelings. Who do you think should get the bailout? So you go ahead and this is your final vote. And this is where I think, we lose a little bit not being able to choose 3 here, because that's where you can have some fun and you can, get some deals being made and other things. But purpose of today was just to really show you the lesson. I'm seeing a lot of H's. Retail, a lot of retail. Carissa, you said retail. Were you retail before?
No, but going by my political card, that seemed to be like what my person would be the most happy with.
You had no choice, huh? If you wanted to get reelected.
Yep.
Retail's popular.
Yeah, looking at the last names, it was easy for me because I had retail before, and then that's what the people wanted. So I'm like, well, it's the political lined up with that. So sorry, automotive, it didn't work out for you.
Yeah. So Amanda, you have healthcare still. Was your political leaning toward healthcare or not?
Yeah, I was downtown, or I was Georgia, but specifically Atlanta region. So it could have gone to entertainment as well, but it did have a push for healthcare. And then my previous answer, so I was just like, I might as well stick with healthcare.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good when those things align. So anybody else want to share what their maybe they were happy or upset with their political card, and or it made them think about something that they could share with their colleagues here tonight?
Well, depending on how you apply it, I'm teaching world history right now, so I'm looking at how you could apply this lesson to things like the Great Depression and just some of the decisions that were made. And if you're talking about civics or even just a basic government class, how much the desire to get reelected actually plays a part in just with answers. So I mean, it's definitely a good point for a discussion to get things kind of rolling with that. Why go from what you originally thought and kind of that progression? I love the process behind it.
Yeah, I really did too. I don't know if it was just me and the way I teach and what I like, how I like to do things, but this lesson was definitely the one that I kept coming back to and deciding which one to share with you guys. It just seems like it's engaging, that it's got a good process and a good flow to the lesson, and it's not too big. It's not something that you're going to read through 52 different steps and be confused with. It's something that you could implement fairly comfortably, I think, in a short amount of time. Low cost. All right. So let's go on to the last couple slides here. Again, you'd tally for round 3. That it's in the PowerPoint if you want to include a more traditional way. So a lot of things, just like any lesson, there's always a lot of debrief and kind of where everything comes together. So if this class was Congress, who would get bailed out, and we could look and tally up everybody's votes and see who would get bailed out, and maybe pick somebody out and say, oh, you didn't get your industry bailed out, you're probably not going to get reelected. At least you voted that way. Maybe you could stand on that. Some other discussion points. Would your decision change if you found out the recession had been caused by one of the industries? So is somebody going to be a scapegoat? What other industries maybe should have been considered? What other variables could play a role in the process other than just those 3? I think personal stories continue to get highlighted in playing roles. I think equity, social justice you could bring in, especially yesterday with our legislature saying that, it's really an economics issue, right? How are you going to distribute scarce goods to people? And we're talking about the vaccine. I've got friends in Florida who aren't going to get the vaccine till June because the politicians decided to give it to, they put the older people in a priority group before teachers. And so since there's so many old people, it's going to take till June till the teachers can get their shots. And why is that? Well, I'm guessing it's because there's a lot of old people and they vote, and those people want to get reelected. that I'm sure that's part of it at least. And, yesterday our legislature decided to not use, well, I don't know if it was a decision, but at least there was some vote in a committee to not use race as a role, to not use gender as a role in the decision making, and to not use socioeconomic factors as a role in the decision making. And then the last one, did the process get easier or harder as more information and more variables were added? So some really good debriefing questions, I think, there as well. Now, this is something totally separate that I just happened to find yesterday from Jadrian Wooten, who is a teacher over at Penn State, an acquaintance of mine. And I'm going to click on it. It just really brings up his Twitter, which has an image in it that you can look at. And I'll kind of describe the image, and hopefully you've clicked on it and you're looking at that image as well. And it's GDP, wages, and jobs by sector. So to give you a little bit of lay of the land, on the horizontal, you've got jobs. On the vertical, you've got wages, and you're looking at over time, you're kind of starting off right before the Great Recession. And so you can kind of see what's happening with different industries and their jobs. If they're moving to the left, they're losing jobs in that industry. If they're moving to the right, they're gaining jobs in that industry. You can talk about the size of the circle for how big that industry is. And then also the wages, whether or not they're going up, is kind of the vertical there. So I love visualizations. I think that's a really good one to maybe build out the lesson a little bit more that I just saw yesterday, and give you some relative comparison as well. You can see education is the one that's right near manufacturing, but it's smaller, darker circle near manufacturing. So cool little visualization that's out there that I wanted to share with you guys. He also, Jadrian, I just found this out yesterday. I mean, this is somebody who, I know decently well. And I just found out he does every Monday email blast on some current event type of econ topic in a really approachable way. So you might want to look into him a little bit and sign into his email blast that he sends out every Monday. All right. Going back into the Nearpod though, a couple of other last things that I wanted to share with you that we're doing. We do professional development for teachers, and this link would be would take you to NextGen, and depending on whether or not you have an account there or not, I don't know exactly what you're going to see when you click on it, because I've got an account I'm already pre-registered in. It takes us right to it takes me right to the sign-in page. But on March 4th, we're doing a professional development along with NextGen Personal Finance on teaching through NextGen Personal Finance arcade games. And that's a 1-hour PD that we're offering a sketchy for. And they'll be giving away a couple of gift cards. And then the second one, the one that I'm on right now, is a 3-hour NextGen deeper dive into NextGen. It's a fin camp. So it's more of a deep dive into all the resources that NextGen's offering. They're by far the most recommended resource that I would give for any personal finance stuff. And that's on March 27th from 9 a.m. till noon. We're doing the NextGen Personal Finance Fin Camp with them. All right, so that brings us to the slide with the form in it. This is the form that you need to complete to make sure that you get the $20 Amazon gift card. And I will get it to you in the next 24 hours, not 48 hours. All right, so I just need, this is what the Council for Economic Education is asking that we get from the teachers that we train. And they're asking, your name, what you teach, about how many students you're reaching per class, the grades that you teach or the grade range, email address, work phone, school district, school name, and contact information there. 3 questions on your workshop, or 4 questions, I'm sorry, on your workshop experience as far as strongly agree to strongly disagree, and then any other suggestions. And once you hit submit, then I will get that information in my Google form, and either later tonight or tomorrow, I will send you out a $20 Amazon gift card for participating today. So if you guys have any other questions, I will, what link seems to be broken, Ryan? to the form?
Yeah, to the form, it just says it refuses to connect. I don't know if it's
Has anybody else been able to get to the form? Other people have been able to get to the form, so my settings are right. Okay, but I can
Okay.
put another link in here. I've got it open. So let me see if I can just put the link in the chat for you. All right, so I'm going to put the link in the chat for everybody, just in case the Nearpod thingy isn't working. So try that link in the chat and see if that one works for you, Ryan.
Yeah, that worked just fine. Thank you.
Yay, all right, cool. I really appreciate everybody, doing stuff in the chat as well. I was able to kind of read them, maybe not always comment on them. Wanted to make sure I stayed on time today. But I do appreciate the stuff that you guys were putting in the chat. And if there's anything that needs to be followed up on, I certainly will do that. You can always reach out to me. I'll make sure that my email address I put in the chat for you as well if you need that. You can sign up to be a member on our website to get email blasts from us every so often. And we usually do once a month to just know more about some of the resources that are out there for teachers or for students. So if you guys don't have any other questions, I'm all set. I appreciate your input, your sharing, your reasoning for your answers today. And I hope you found the last hour useful. So thank you so much and take care. If you have any questions, we've got 2 more minutes for, I think it's going to boot us out.
No, Derek, thank you. Thank you very much for your time and appreciate the links. I have a fellow teacher that is working with Nearpod now and kind of spearheading that program, see if it works with what we're currently doing. So it was cool to kind of see what he's been playing around with and the tools that he's been talking about, because I had no concept before. I was trying to find video snips or anything at YouTube to say, what are you doing with this? Because he's describing, it's like there's videos in there and there's links and there's this. I don't know what that means. There's stuff. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So it definitely put that to, and it definitely brought back some of my old economic lessons. So thank you for the flashback.
I hope it wasn't traumatic.
Oh no, I never minded it. And then I have a little bit of a business background, so try to always put that in. We had lots of fun stories and things to share. So thank you.
Good. You're welcome. Thank you. I appreciate you giving your time today.